Hello and welcome to the 14th lesson of the AGR SketchUp course. In today's lesson, we're going to learn how to use the scale command. In order to activate the scale command, we can click on this icon over here in the Getting Started toolbar, or we could go to Tools and find the scale command over here, or we could press the S key on our keyboard for the shortcut. So I will press S, and when I hover my cursor on this line, you can see that it gives us a no crossing sign. This means that a scale tool will not work on lines which are parallel to any of these axes. So for example, if it's parallel to red, green, or blue, the scale tool will not work. But if the line is in two directions, it's diagonal in two directions or three directions, this will scale that line. So it will work on this line and on this face, and also on a geometry like this. So why doesn't the scale tool work on a line? Because we can use the move command and just move this line and make it shorter, or we could make it longer. Even if we have it in the green direction, it will not even work as well, the scale tool. You can see that it gives us a no crossing sign, or even in the blue direction. But this works on a diagonal line. So if I select this line and press S on keyboard, now I can scale this line as needed. If I select this line and press S on keyboard, this will give us 8 points, which will scale our object as needed. So if I hover my cursor on this point, you can see that it says that it will give us a uniform scale about opposite point. But if I hover my cursor over here, it gives us a red scale about opposite point, which will not be a uniform. It will be a non-uniform scaling. So if I click on this point and then move my cursor, you can see that it grows or shrinks this line according to our need. So what if the axis is parallel to this line? So let me right click on this axis and then just click on place, and then place this axis, click for the origin point of the axis, and then move your cursor in the direction of the line, and then just click on this line, and then click for the green axis perpendicular to edge, and this will change the direction of these axes. So if I want to scale this line now, you can see that it gives us a no crossing sign. But we can now scale this line and also this line, because it is now in two directions. I will right click on one of these axes and click on reset. So keep in mind that if you want to scale a line, it needs to be in two directions. So for a plane like this, I can select this plane and hit S on keyboard, and you can see that it gives us 8 points that we can scale. If I click on each of these midpoints, I can change the scale of this plane in one direction. So this will change the scale in the red direction, and it will change the proportions of this square. So what if we want to scale it from this point, but not changing its proportions? So I will click on this point and then hold the Shift key, and this will scale this square uniformly, and it will not change its proportions. And what if we want to scale it from the midpoint? You can see that it scales it from the opposite point. But if we want to scale it from the midpoint, we can just hold the Control key, and this will scale it in the red direction from two sides from the midpoint. So what if we want to scale it from the midpoint and scale it uniformly? So we can hold Control plus Shift, and now if I click and then move it to the right, it will make it larger, or if I move it to the left, it will make it smaller. And if I click on these corners, I can scale this uniformly. And if I want to scale it from the midpoint, I can hold the Control key, and this will scale this plane from the midpoint. And if I want to scale it non-uniformly and change the proportions, I can hold Shift, and now if I click, I can change both the X direction or the red direction and also the green direction. So it will change its proportions. Or if I want to scale it from the midpoint, I can hold Control and Shift, and now I can scale it non-uniformly in two directions. So how does the scaling work? It works according to percentage of the original shape. So for example, if this shape is now 100%, if I press S on keyboard and scale this up, you can see at the right bottom, we can have like 150% larger than the previous one, or we can say 1.5 times the first shape. Or we could, if I shrink it down, you can see that it gives us like 0.5, or we could say like 50% of the first size that we had. So for each 50%, SketchUp gives us a snap. So for example, if I move my cursor, and you can see that for the 50%, it gives us a snap. And then for the 1, it gives us a snap. And then for 1.5 meter or 2, it gives us a snap, and so on. We could also give values to the scaling. So for example, if you want to scale this shape for 1.5 times in the red direction, or 150% in the red direction, and 300% in the green direction, we can do something like this. We could click on this point and then move our cursor and then type, like for example, 1.5 followed by a comma, and then type 3, and this will give us 150% of scaling in the red direction and 300% in the green direction. It's very important that which of these points we click on. So for example, if I click on this point, and now if I type 1.5 followed by a comma, and then type 3, and then this will scale it from the midpoint. And same is for this part. If I click on this one and then type 1.5 comma 3, it will scale it from the midpoint in the red direction and scale it from here in the green direction. Or if we want to have this point being fixed, we could click on each of these corners. So for example, if we wanted to be like 150% in this direction and then 300% in this direction, we could click on this point and then type 1.5 followed by a comma and then 3. So you need to work on these values and just experiment it for yourself, so you will get a good feel on how the scaling works. So let's now move on for a solid or for a cube or something 3D that we have in SketchUp. So I will triple click and then hit S on keyboard. And now you can see that for each face, we have 8 points around that face and then 1 point in the midpoint of that face. So this means that we have all these options that we had on a face, and also we have another option. We can scale it in 3D. So this will shrink this cube down in the blue direction, or we could just click on this midpoint in the red direction, or click on this point in the green direction. The Control, Shift, and Control plus Shift works also on this 3D solid. So if I click on this point and then hold the Control key, you can see that it scales it from the center point from 2 directions. And if I hold this point and hold the Control plus Shift key, you can see that it scales it uniformly. So if I click on each of these corners on a 3D volume, we can scale it uniformly inside of SketchUp. But we could also hold the Shift key, and now we can change each of these sides non-uniformly. to change the proportions of this cube. Or if I click on this point, this will keep the size of the cube in the green direction, and it will change the red and the blue. And if I click on this point, this will only change the cube in green and blue direction, and it will hold its value for the red axis. So there are a lot of other things that we can do for a 3D object with the scale tool. So for example, if I click on this face and then hit S on keyboard, we can scale this face to create a shape like this. Or we could hold the control key and scale it from two sides. And if I hit F on keyboard and offset this face, and then push-pull this face down, we could make something like this and create a flower box. Or we could also scale it up, so it will create a face something like this. And now if I offset this face and then push-pull it down, we could have a form like this. So it will also be maybe a flower box. So what if we want to scale this face in its own directions? So if I hit S on keyboard now, you can see that it gives us a box which the plane is inside of this box. So if I want to scale this face according to its directions in the slope direction, we need to change the axis. If I want to scale it right now, it will be something like this, and this will not be a good scaling for this one. Or we could just like scale it like this, or like hold the shift key, and if I hold shift, you can see that it's just changes the scaling also in the red direction. But if we want to only have this scaling in this direction, we can right click on this axis and then hit place, and then click on this point for the origin point, and then click on this edge, and then we could click on this edge above. And now you can see that the axes, or two of these axes, are placed on this plane. And now if I hit S on keyboard, you can see that the scaling is now for a plane and not for a 3D object. So now if I click on this one, I can just scale it up or down. Okay, so now that we have changed these axes, what if we want to bring it back to where it was before? So it's nothing complicated. You can just right click on each of these axes and then click on this reset option that we have over here, and this will place it back on where it was before. Alright, let's now move on to learn how to use the axis and now how to change it according to our needs. So I will right click and then hit place, and now I could click on a face or on a point or on an edge to place the origin of the axis, or I could click over here somewhere. And when I have clicked and placed the origin of the axis, now it wants me to locate the red axis. So I will click maybe on this point or any point that we want. And we can now define the green axis, the direction of the green axis. So now the red axis is now locked, and this will change the green and the blue direction. I will place this green axis on this plane, so the blue axis will be upwards. So what if we want to have the blue axis in this direction? We could right click and hit place, and then click for the origin point. And now you can see over here in the down part of SketchUp on the instruction pane, it says that if we hit Alt on our keyboard, we can alternate the axis orientation. So if I hit Alt, you can see that it now gives us the green axis to indicate. Or if I hit Alt again, we can place the blue axis. So I will place the blue axis over here. So now it's time to locate the red axis. So I will place the red axis like in the blue direction. like this. I will right click on one of these axes and hit reset, and this will reset the axis and be placed where it was before. So there are a couple of other options that we have. If we right click on each of these axes, we have place and then we have move. What does the move do for us? It's very easy to work with the move option for the axis. So if I click on this move, a window will appear, and we have several options that we can change. So we have two parts. We have the move and we have the rotate. So we can change each of these values to change the x, y, or z. So if I change this to 5 meters, for example, this will move the origin point of these axes 5 values in the red direction. So if I hit OK over here, you can see that it moved the origin point to over here. So I will right click and hit reset again, and then right click, hit move, and then I will now change the x and the y for 5 meters each. And this will be placed somewhere like this. And now if I hit OK, you can see that it moved the origin point of the axis 5 values in the red direction and 5 values in the green direction, or 5 meters in the red, 5 meters in the green direction. I will hit Ctrl Z, and this will undo the movement of the axis. And now I will click move again, and now I could place it 5 meters in the blue direction, and this will move the origin point 5 meters in the blue direction. We could also use negative values for these ones, so we could type -5, and this will place it 5 meters to the left. So we now know how to use the move part of the axis. Now we're going to talk about the rotation part. So how does this work? It works something like this. So if it says red, the red axis will be stable, and it will change only the green and the blue direction according to the degree that we choose. So for example, if I type 45, this will change the green and the blue axis 45 degrees. I will hit Ctrl Z. And we could change it, we could click on the move again and change the blue. And if I change this blue or the Z axis, this will rotate the red and the green axis for us. So for example, if I type 30 or 60 degrees for this one, this will change the red and the green axis, or this will rotate these two axes. So why should we change the direction of these axes? So for example, I will click on this move and then change the value of the Z to 45 degrees and hit OK. And now we can draw lines according to these axes. So for example, we can draw a line for about 5 meters over here, and then 6 over here, and then hold shift in the red direction, and then click on this point, and then click on this endpoint to create that face. Or for example, let me reset this axis, and then we can just draw several planes like this, and then we can change the direction of this axis to 45 degrees, and then we can now draw rectangles according to the new axis, like this, and maybe just a rectangle like this over here. And now we can just erase all these internal lines, and we can have this as the object that we can now push, pull, or extrude, and have it like this. And we can then scale this to maybe something like this, and then just push, pull it again. We can scale it from here now and create various shapes like this. Or we could also have it from the front view. I will reset this axis and then create some planes over here, and then we can just right click on this axis and then click on move, and we can change from the green axis like 45 degrees. And now you can see that it has changed, and we can now draw our rectangle in this direction to create like sloped roofs for the facade. Create something like this. There's a plugin named Cleanup that we can use to erase all these small lines inside, so we would not need to select all of them and then hit delete. So I will select all of the. It will also erase the faces, but it's no problem. We can just click and draw a line on one of these faces, and then it will turn it into a face. So now I can just push-pull this face, and maybe we could just scale it down, and then another push-pull, and we could have something like this inside of SketchUp. So you can see now that it's very easy to use the scale tool together with the rotation of the axis, or even drawing together with the axis. So you can just draw according to the axis, so you don't want to bother yourself with the degree of the line and all those other stuff. So you just need to first change the degree of these axes, and later you can just draw how you want inside of SketchUp. Okay, so we now know how to use the place, move, and reset tool from this menu. There is also align view, so if I click on this align view, this will change the view from the top, so it will show everything from the top. So what is expected from SketchUp is that if I click on this blue axis and change my view according to the front view, and right click and then hit align view, this should show us the front view, but this does not work like this. It's just if I click on this align view, it will just give us a top view from the blue direction. Or we could also, there is another option which says hide. So if I click on this hide for the axis, this will hide the axis for us and leave us with a blank space. And we could go to view and click on this axis, and this will bring back in the axis again. So this concludes the 14th lesson of the AGR SketchUp course. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.